It's December 1st, 2022. This is Roqe. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 220 of Roqe. Dear West, can you offer more than lip service? I'm jianghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto, Canada. Salam dostan aziz. Durud bar shoma. Hey, international community, can you offer more than lip service on Iran? Don't get us wrong, we appreciate that you're now playing along. There's acknowledgments of the Iranian people's fight for free expression. There's even a well-received and communicated UN special session. But why does it feel like you're looking for absolution because you don't actually want to believe in the revolution? Why does it feel like you'll commend brave Iranians for having their say, but then it's back to dealings with the mullahs and the JCPOA? Look, the Iranian people are going to eventually make this revolution happen. The young, courageous souls of Iran are on a mission to change history. But will it be despite you rather than with an international blessing? It was on October 4th, 2 months ago, that I did an opening essay in this space called Where the Hell is the Western World? At the time, it was a common frustration that despite brave young citizens led by women and girls being on the streets in Iran at the cost of their own safety and lives, the West had barely raised an eyebrow. Surely the global powers would have transformed to support by now. Well, let's see. It's been 8 long, bloody weeks, and the international community has made some concerned statements? Dear West, can you offer more than lip service? As thousands of Iranians are detained, sentenced to death, or thrown in jail, it's becoming hard not to conclude that you're waiting for this revolution to fail. And here's a disclaimer that we don't wish to take anything away from the tireless work of Iranians and supporters in the diaspora who've been pushing the UN or government leaders or NGOs to get involved. Your important work has certainly struck a chord, but the West is still not really on board, is it? In a joint statement today, U.S. President Biden and French President Macron expressed their respect for the Iranian people. Well, that's very nice. But do you understand how the Iranian population is paying the price? Remember that common refrain after all the mass shootings in the United States that simply saying thoughts and prayers is no longer enough? Now apply that to your sweet sentiments about Iran. People rightly demand action. It's now been over 10 weeks since the Iranian uprising caught fire, and by any measure, the situation has become much more dire. This is not internal strife. This is not a set of protests. This is a revolution and a humanitarian crisis. In the last week alone, more than 16 people were killed by the brutal regime in Iran. As of 2 days ago, official reports cite at least 448 people, including 60 children and 29 women, are now dead since Mahsa Amini's murder. Those numbers are a bare minimum and very likely far below the actual figures. Dear West, can you offer more than lip service? Let's get specific. Has there been any major diplomatic measures taken by any Western nation? Any ambassadors recalled or embassies closed due to this situation? One thing is clear. There's been no action to date from the U.S. Congress, no statement or resolution. Might it be time to step up for human rights? Hey, Biden administration, where are you? The man that you appointed solely to carry through the JCPOA, Robert Malley, the one who's called this a protest looking for reforms? Yeah, that same guy. He's still in his position. Might we ask why? Hey, Canadian government, the IRGC is still not fully on the terrorist list, despite your strong words. Hey, major corporate leaders, you've been largely silent on this humanitarian crisis. Will you take any action for the Baluchis or the Kurds? And hey, international community, what happened to helping Iranians beat the internet crackdowns and material support for those fighting for a free nation? What happened to understanding that the way to pressure the murderous regime in Iran is to punish it with isolation? To restate and paraphrase that oft-mentioned slogan, we don't need the West to save Iran. We just need you to stop enabling this terrorist regime. Dear West, can you offer more than lip service? Or is that simply too extreme? On this edition of Roqe, we are joined by Dr. Kayvan Mirhadi, stress recovery specialist Solmaz Barghgir, and human rights advisor Parastoo Fatemi, plus the Roqe Roundtable. This is Roqe, episode 220, The Uprising. Dear West, can you offer more than lip service? Here we are in the Roqe studio in Toronto, coming to you on roqemedia.com. This is our ongoing mission to build a new audiovisual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. We are on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, CastBox. And if you like to see some visuals with Roqe, switch over to YouTube. If you like your Roqe descriptions and bulletins in English and in Persian, check us out on Telegram. You can subscribe on any of these platforms. Hello, Pegah.
Hello.
Hello, Shaya.
Hi, Aziza.
And hello, Darya.
Hello.
We have you back here for the Roqe Roundtable, which will commence in just a few moments. I should say it's a great show. Looking forward to some fabulous guests we've got coming up. Dr. Kayvan Mirhadi, who you may just know as Dr. K.
Yeah, through his Instagram.
That's right. The chief of internal medicine at the Clifton Springs Hospital in New York, but perhaps as significantly, a major presence on Instagram and online. He kind of, I think, rose to public attention and I guess international fame during the COVID crisis, helping people, particularly those in Iran, through online medical advice and thoughts, and now is doing the same, but this time with injured folks and people who are caught in the demonstrations and who need desperate medical care and cannot go to hospitals because of this insane situation in Iran, where if you go to a hospital, I mean, this is surely not even in wartime today. If you go to a hospital, you risk being picked up there by the authorities and arrested if they find out that you're one of the demonstrators. So you may have a broken leg or a lesion or some horrible gash in your head, and people are not going to the hospital.
Yeah.
They're taking cover somewhere and then going on Instagram to see if Dr. K can help them. You know?
Yeah, and not even just going to the hospital, even calling an ambulance if you happen to be in the midst of one of these protests and something awful happens, because they're using ambulances to actually take people to undisclosed locations, prisons, detention centers, and so on.
Really happy to have Dr. K coming on the program. We've actually wanted him to be on the program for a while now, and he's doing really important work. So he'll join us. Parastoo Fatemi returns to Roqe, a human rights advisor and refugee counselor in Dusseldorf, Germany. She is somebody who watches what the UN does, and we'll get her sense of what she thought of the UN special session last week and the progress that's being made there. And Solmaz Barghgir will kick us off in just a few moments. She's going to come into the Roqe studio, an Iranian-Canadian life coach, motivational speaker, stress recovery specialist, which would be helpful. And Solmaz is, she's pretty much given over her practice right now to helping for the revolution, and she's been posting, and it seems like she's tirelessly doing this work in support of the uprising. So we'll get a perspective as a life coach and as a stress recovery specialist on what she has to say. I know one of the things she says is that there's a lot of stuff that we're consuming in videos and online and all of that we shouldn't be consuming because it's ultimately having a negative effect on our brains. Actually, Dr. K is going to speak about that too, I think. So we're just bringing on people to tell us to stop looking so much at doom scrolling through our Instagram accounts. Yeah,
I definitely need
to. I think that we'll talk about that. But okay, so first up though, so those are the guests coming up. We're looking forward to it. First up, our Roqe Roundtable, and let's get to some of the items from the last few days. I mean, we would be remiss if we don't talk about the World Cup, because and I guess this is maybe the last time we have to talk about Team Melli, although perhaps not the last time to talk about the absurd actions of the Qatari authorities in cracking down on people. But so Team Melli played their final game a couple of days ago against the USA. Did anyone see it? I don't think anyone. Did you guys know there was a game on?
I
don't think any of the Iranians or Americans knew about this. No, this was huge news, of course. It was this big game that had all kinds of implications, including whichever team wins, advances. And I've been pretty clear about this, but let me be clear about this once again. From my perspective, and I even got into a little bit of an argument with some folks online about this, and even a couple of my extended family members. I wanted Team Melli out. I just wanted it. I was happy that Team USA won. And not even on a personal referendum about Team Melli, as much as I did the essay 4 weeks ago, let's not let the World Cup be a distraction. And I was really worried about Team Melli advancing and this distraction continuing. Even amongst those who don't support the team, there was just so much chatter about what's the guy wearing, who's going to say this, what did the coach do, and it was just occupying so much oxygen, which I think was really benefiting the regime. And so I was glad to see it over with. I know that breaks the heart of some Team Melli supporters, but apparently not that many Team Melli supporters, because I didn't see that many people crying inside Iran. We didn't see videos of that.
No, quite the contrary. We saw celebrations erupt in Iran after their loss. And speaking about their homecoming, I guess one of the things that I noticed and I thought was almost comical was the homecoming entourage that they kind of had, and it was mostly hired IRGC actors. I mean, all of it was just, you could tell it wasn't any of the real Iranians, if you will. And I was just thinking as I was seeing that, the contrast to when we saw Elnaz Rekabi come back to Iran, and the difference between that welcome and what we were witnessing with Team Melli returning to Iran.
Right, because the real Iranian were celebrating in the street for the loss. And
well, some were. We don't know. Yeah. I mean, I know, with Shaya, your argument is that there's people who are in their homes that support Team Melli that we don't know about.
Yes. But I'm in your side. Like, I'm very happy that Team Melli is out.
Let's move on. Yeah. But I've been saying this for a few days. I don't know if I said it on the last show, but to me, the greatest indicator, like if you're looking for, we have this question that props up every once in a while, especially from someone who's less than enthusiastic about the revolution, where they go, well, how do you really know, that the Iranian population is behind this? I mean, come on. I mean, we don't really know. I mean, there's no accurate polling. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's just a group of, delinquent urban kids, or even maybe it's a lot of people, but it's not a majority. When last week, when Team Melli, when the Iranian national team when they won that game against Wales, right? An Iranian national football team, big sport in Iran, we know that, wins a game at the World Cup, and no one celebrates in Iran. You didn't see one photo, video of people other than the Basij or members of the military or whatever, waving the flag, not one. There was no video of some big, happy celebration on the streets of Tehran. That's huge. That says it all. If people were kind of ho-hum about the revolution, the teams just won a game, wouldn't we see some of that? I mean, to me, that's it, man. That says it all.
But I think that's also the distinction between the diaspora and Iranians living in Iran, right? I always say, when we've talked about people going out onto the streets and, protesting and revolting and all of that, I've always said I'm very happy to tell someone outside of Iran, why the hell didn't you come to a rally, or why didn't you attend this, or why didn't you support this? But I would never put myself in a position to say that to someone in Iran. And there's that distinction. So I think even with the World Cup, there's been that distinction that, those of us living outside of Iran, we still have these comforts of being able to be distracted by the World Cup, even if it's momentarily. But for those who are in Iran and on the front lines and in those streets,
you can be distracted by watching the World Cup, but just not Team Melli.
Yeah, no,
that's the distraction. People can. I don't have any objection to somebody going and watching a movie right now. It's like I'm not. You don't have to be like, glued to the revolution. Because people need to take those breaks.
Oh, for sure. Well, what I was trying to say is, the people who are in Iran and kind of at the heart of this, I think it's been the last thing on their minds. They're so preoccupied with surviving when they go out into these demonstrations, protests, whatever it is, that it's completely different. I don't think that it even. Well,
not everybody's demonstrating. See, I want to be serious about this. Like my point is for sure there aren't millions of people on the streets demonstrating yet, right? So there's been a guessing game. What's going on? Maybe there's a lot of people. Friends of mine have brought this up to me. Well, actually, maybe how do we know Iranians are supporting this? Why would they not be out in the streets? Why would they not be out on the streets after Team Melli wins the second game?
I think
why would no one be out on the street? It's a huge event. It's a big event.
But that's exactly what I'm saying. Even if they're not in a position to go out onto the streets, let's say they're older or unable or afraid or whatever it is, I think it's still so close to them that I don't know. I would imagine that they're not really thinking of the World Cup right now.
What I want to say is that when they won, it was just like a safe really space that they like if they wanted to celebrate it, they could have gone to the streets.
That's what I think. That's what I think. Yeah.
But then
there was a moment where it'd be forgivable, at least if you really don't care about the revolution and you and your buddies want to go out and go
celebrate.
Where are they? Where were they?
Yeah, because that means that, to your point, everyone are affected by it.
Exactly.
So
that's exactly what I'm
no
saying.
one wants to celebrate it. And then on the other hand, we see the other night, like on US and Iran, when Iran lost the game, now like everyone now are out, which is again like
it wasn't everyone. It wasn't everyone.
A lot of people.
It was that we saw a few celebrations.
Maybe like that's exaggeration definitely. But what actually caught my attention was that I'm from Isfahan, so a lot of it's not as active a city, but that night a lot of neighborhoods that they were always quiet. Like my friends were sending me videos of again, not everyone, a lot of people are out. So
celebrating the U.S. win,
celebrating that, which so
there you go, Shaya.
Yeah, that's sad. I mean, it's funny.
It is sad,
yeah. I have to say, I don't get me wrong. I'm not supporting Team Melli by any means, but there's a sadness to this. There really is. It's.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's quite heartbreaking to think that we're in this position. I mean, this whole thing is sad, of course, but I don't know. I mean, sports has always been that release, that thing that brought us together. I mean, especially football for Iranians. Like every year that Iran was in the World Cup, that's when Iranians from every corner of the world would come together.
And so many people were conflicted. It was the whole dynamic. I mean, I'm sitting watching a game where I'm cheering for America.
Exactly.
I've never been in that position.
Yeah.
We've talked about it on this show that in 1998 I was on tour in Arkansas when that Iran-US game happened, and my bandmates had to deter me from running out on the street with an Iranian flag because they were like, "No, buddy, this isn't a good idea in Arkansas." I mean, it was everything's on its head right now, but. It really wasn't helpful. I think it was. I don't know anyone who was getting. I don't even know if the players were enjoying it. I guess I know that they probably would have wanted to advance to the next round. Maybe I don't know, but just seemed like an exercise in futility. It's bad timing and it's not working out. And but if to add a layer of the sadness to it, there's so much confusion in the West, in the Western media about the Iranian, situation. So there was a bunch of people again, on my Arsenal podcast, for example. I love these guys when they talk about Arsenal football, but when they start talking about Iran, which they call Iran, it gets a little weird, So they were like, yeah, I feel really bad for Iran because, the people are going through a tough time and the team didn't win for them, and I'm sure everybody in the country wanted to win, and you kind of want to reach into the podcast and go, no. There's nuances to this. And then I was listening to Howard Stern, who is an American, radio broadcaster, and I'm a fan of his. Have been for many years. I think he's a great broadcaster. He's a little, over the top sometimes, but and in the past has said and done things that I'm big a fan of. But he's really, I've said for years, I think he's a great broadcaster, good interviewer, and always has an interesting take on things. And he was saying right on. USA beat this Iran team, and they've got all this. But then he goes, that shithole country.
Oh my God.
And then he says, where women can't drive, and you get arrested if you try to vote. If women try to vote, and he's talking about Saudi Arabia from 15 years ago,
exactly.
Right? But and I'm just going, oh man, this is not what we want. We don't want this out there.
Right.
And the whole shame of this whole situation is that it's hard to push back against that because you don't want to be in a position of defending the regime,
right.
you know, and going, no, actually, it's not so bad in Iran, because it's horrible what's going on in Iran. But then this kind of misinformation, and you know, they're kind of going, well, why wouldn't the people were celebrating, you know, that the Team USA won because that's a shithole country, you know. So it's really hard.
It's
really
such a fine
hard.
line between villainizing the country versus villainizing the regime. And I think that's the nuance that a lot of Western media still get so incorrectly. And those facts that they try to present are so misguided and so misplaced. And what they're saying is, I get that it's coming from a good place. You know, I'm sure, I don't know what Howard Stern was thinking, but a lot of times it's like they try to portray this image and it's so false about Iranians and yet still could be so true about the regime.
Yeah, I think later he said, you know, hopefully the Iranian people, good people, they can come out of this. But his fundamental facts about Iran were, you know,
horrible.
Were just way off. And that stuff is...
He's sad again. Yeah.
It's absolutely sad. Like, one big thing like that I was just like thinking about is that I did not watch the game, and I really didn't care if like they were winning or losing. The only thing that I was slightly happy about was that the regime now cannot dance on our blood, basically.
Yes.
That's the
they
that
can't
was
use
the only
this as a tool. That was part of my point. Get it out of the way, you know. Now, on the other hand, there's this absurdity of Qatar and FIFA, who up until Iran was still in the World Cup, of course, infamously, I suppose, were not allowing any political signs or T-shirts into the stadiums. You know, we talked to Natasha Kenway on our show on Monday, who was detained for a while. She couldn't fly her flag, Women Life Freedom flag. Sahar, who we had on the show last week, was stopped from going in because she was wearing a Massa Amini shirt or something like that. We saw all these videos and stories of. So then Iran exits, and FIFA and Qatar say, actually, you know, it's okay. We're going to allow political signs and T-shirts and all that back into the stadiums, including about Iran.
Yeah. Specifically about Iran, actually. They pinpointed...
Because they were allowing anything else.
Yeah, so
before,
they pinpointed two things in their statement. One was they said that you can bring in rainbow paraphernalia, so essentially anything with the rainbow flag, colors, whatever. And the other was banners in protest of the situation in Iran. Very pointedly, they mentioned Iran. Wow. And my question was, you know, like, is someone going to bring a banner to, I don't know, the next USA game, for example? So
let's just be specific about this. Not only, I mean, we know that Qatar and Iran are, you know, in cahoots, and so that was the deal was made. We're not going to, don't worry, as long as the Iran team's in there, we won't allow any shameful protests by these heathens, you know, or whatever. But think about FIFA. Like, what a bullshit, unethical institution this is. That they would go along with this, you know, that they stated their whole statement at the top of the World Cup basically made for Iran, and so that and around the armband, you know, the supporting One Love armband. The statement was, we play football, no politics. We got to keep it clean. Come on, everybody. Everybody knew this was bullshit, of course, but that was the statement. 1 week later, as Iran exits, bring in the signs. It's all allowed. Okay. Yeah. What I mean, how do these guys, you know, live with themselves? It's bizarre. It's bizarre how cravenly, how openly corrupt this shit is. You know.
I mean, even their statement was laughable. Their statement was something along the lines of, you know, they were reassuring fans that they've taken every measure to speak to whether it's Qatari officials or the officials who are in charge of, you know, the stadiums who would allow people or wouldn't. And then they said something really funny, which is, we're aware of those one-off incidents that have taken place. And I mean, I just found it so laughable, and the audacity that they have to say something like one-off incidents, where we've seen...
We personally know 6 incidents.
Exactly. Not only have we seen hundreds of videos, each one of us probably has a friend, a family member, somebody who's actually been there and has told us firsthand. So, I mean...
Money.
Yeah.
$200 billion is the money that, I mean, more than
Qatar,
Qatar spent on the World Cup.
And it's like over 10 times the amount of any World Cup ever or something, or it's a lot more than that. Dr. K, Solmaz, Barghgir, and Parastoo Fatemi coming up. Before we ended up the roundtable, there's a couple of things we were going to talk about that were... I guess more difficult information coming out of Iran. Darya, you want to bring up the Hossein Ronaqi situation.
Right.
Remind us who Hossein is, of course, for folks who are just catching up.
Yeah, so Hossein Ronaqi was arrested at the beginning of the protest. He's an activist who's been active since Junbish Sabs, and he was arrested. And
he's a journalist. He's a blogger. He's well known. Yeah.
Yes, he's a well-known blogger. That actually he was working towards providing proxies and VPNs to people in Iran, and he was arrested and he was on hunger strike for almost 60 days, more than 60 days, and he was released last week, which. Obviously, all of us were very happy about it, but right at the same day, there was this attack started at him that, why he's not thin enough, why his legs are not broken, which was supposed to be broken, why he's not dead.
This is based on people seeing some video of him and photos. This is online, right?
Yes.
People begin attacking, questioning the integrity of...
Hossein Ronaqi.
A guy who's been in jail for the last 2.5 months, And
then this is definitely not the first time that we've seen these sort of attacks on influential people, and it won't be the last time. Absolutely. And then one thing that was sad about it is that usually people are very smart about it, because we know who's starting these sort of fake news, and we never pay attention to it. We just always very careful not to spread it.
And who is starting this fake news?
Cyberies, Arzeshi people, those people that they just want to create those fake news to take attention. So you won't pay attention to the actual news and then lose credibility for those people.
So this is the regime you're saying would have started these rumors about Ronaqi to distract people and to discredit him, obviously.
Absolutely. And then usually the argument is that whenever you try to defend these people, they're just going to say that, you're just creating a god, you're creating bot sazi nakonin, we should be able to question them. And absolutely, that by itself, that's a correct statement, but they just bringing up some random BS accusation on these people, and then when you say what, they're just gonna be you're defending them, you're just making another Khomeini. And usually the difference between this one and the other ones is that this one I think got slipped, not as much, but still it got some attention to the point that he had to 2 days ago take some pictures of himself shirtless, showing how much weight he lost. That's very sad for someone who's been
humiliating that he has to do that.
And then there was this tweet, and it was very the exact same that I was thinking, that just imagine what he was thinking at the same time that he was taking these pictures, that after these many years that I've been putting up myself for people, for revolution, for everything that's happening, now I have to take pictures to prove myself. So I just want to mention that we have to be careful, because right now it's we're flooding with information. A lot of news comes to us, we're just scrolling through our social media and everything comes to our mind. We have limited time to really fact-checked things.
That's right. And you can somebody can pretty much say anything, and it can travel around the diaspora and the world, Instagram world, instantaneously. And if a lie travels around enough times, it becomes a truth, kind of,
Exactly.
And also, we sometimes we underestimate the cyber army. Sometimes they are really intelligent, and they are bahush, smart. They know how they can divide people, how they can distract people, and we have to be more focused.
It's funny, I had actually seen the images that you're talking about of Hossein Ronaghi shirtless, but I hadn't heard this I guess controversy surrounding the images. And I mean, I'm glad I didn't, to be honest with you, because when I was looking at those images, all I was thinking is just this poor man and what he's had to put on the line. And now to hear that, it's just angering me to think that, and I can only imagine, like you said, what he must have been thinking to want to take those pictures.
And we don't bring it up here to amplify it, obviously. Let's be very clear, it's fake news. He was on a hunger strike.
Absolutely.
But it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing. And it also plays into this voracious appetite. I want to do an essay about this at some point. I didn't do it for today, but this is the first revolution that's taking place in this level of social media toxicity, where no one can possibly meet the purity test. I mean, Hossein Ronaghi, this guy seems a paragon of integrity in terms of anything everybody's ever said about him. And he gets, questioned. And it's like anybody who appears to possibly be a leadership candidate, or anybody who grows too much of an audience, or anybody who has a popular song, or anybody who it just gets attacked. And there's a lot of divisions happening. And that's one of the tricky things about talking about that is that's also a regime tactic. A regime and its lobbies in the diaspora will say, oh, the people in Iran are unified, but look at these horrible people in the diaspora who all are divided and hate each other, and nothing can ever come of that, so we should probably reform the regime. That's the way they operate. And at the same time, it is so disappointing to see this circular firing squad where Iranians are just shooting at each other, metaphorically, not the shooting that's happening in Iran, but and sometimes believing it, this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. It's sad. How...
Sorry, your answer to everything today is it's sad. You're melancholy today.
Yeah, it's sad. Okay, even thinking about it makes me sad. How people, we are in the middle of revolution, for God's sake. Why is it important that how چند کیلو لاغر شد اصلا به تو چه؟ It's very sad.
Yeah, it's sometimes I almost wonder, there's so much hunger for fodder, coming out of about this revolution. There's so much hunger to see that a new big demonstration, or a UN Special Assembly, or some information or headway. Come on, let's see progress. And that necessarily cannot happen every day.
That's right.
And when that isn't there, people are filling it with nonsense about Team Melli, or whether Hossein Ronaghi was really on hunger strike or not, or all this kind of stuff, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Or just attacking each other in the online world. Before we go, I mean, now that Shaya is sad, I was going to say there's also a lot of the other thing that's been happening in the last few days is we're all sad about this. I'm not, the unending growing list. I mean, I did the opening essay on Monday about go ahead, put everybody in jail.
They listen to you.
It almost seems like that's the agenda. It's like the arrests have gone upward again, executions have gone upward. You've got some stats on
I
this?
have a full page of just names and incidents, and it would just, there's no shortage of people who have been detained, arrested, tortured, killed, executed. But just in the last couple of days, a couple of things that I really wanted us to talk about. Obviously, I think a lot of us who are following the news have heard the name Mehran Samak, which is the 27-year-old who was shot dead after honking his horn after the US-Iran game. So he was shot in the head in his car for honking his horn in celebration of the USA team winning. And in a really strange twist of events, he's from Bandar Anzali, which is the same part of Iran that Saida Zatollahi is from. And there's this image circulating.
Who's
one of the players on Team Melli. He's a midfielder on the team, I believe. And so he actually posted a picture after hearing about the killing of Mehran Samak, of them as children on a youth football team. And just seeing the contrast of that in light of what was happening with the World Cup, in light of what's happening with the revolution. I mean, there's not been a shortage of gut-wrenching moments, but I think, this is just another one that was added to the list to think that, I don't even know. I don't even have words for it anymore. So that was definitely one thing that we heard about over the last couple of days.
And so I can just say again, for anybody who is listening and going, Jian, let people enjoy Team Melli, what's the big deal? And, so they didn't take a position against the revolution. It's not like there was an incident that took place that we're all still sore about, and certainly there have been many of those.
Yeah.
This is happening in real time every day. Like while the soccer game was happening, while the football match is on, they're on the pitch, there's people being shot. There's people being killed. So it's impossible to not prioritize that, right? To not suggest that we don't want that to distractions from that. And this kind of intersection of the football player and the fan and the shot in the head. It's all so dark and it's an unending.
It is, and that's what I was saying. There's no shortage of things that we can talk about in that sense. But, another one of the reports that we heard was of the 7 Iranians who were executed, most of whom were from Baluchistan. And so we've seen that, in certain parts of Iran, we've seen a higher kind of crackdown and higher number of deaths and definitely more bloody scenarios. Then there was another report of 10 children, all under 18, who were taken to trial for acting against national security, disturbing public peace, fighting against God, and this moharebe that we keep hearing about, which is capital punishment, is an offense that leads to capital punishment. And then there was another.
What was that? The crimes against the earth or something?
Yeah, it's crimes against God and disturbing peace on earth. Mufsed
fil arz, like corrupter in the earth, on the earth.
Corrupting the earth. Yeah.
And then there was another report actually that I wanted to talk about that I heard about that just blew my mind. 2 doctors who are from Karaj, I believe. They had attended a funeral or one of the ceremonies for one of the individuals who had been killed by the regime in these protests. And the regime had singled them out, indicated that they were doctors. I don't know if they had been helping people. If they hadn't, I don't know what the truth is. But they actually identified them, waited until they went home. 3 a.m, barged into their home, arrested them, detained them, and now they're on trial. Well, I use the term very loosely in a situation like Iran's. And they're now probably on death row as well.
That's right. They're up for execution. That's what I heard, yeah.
And again, like I said, there's no shortage. There's a story of 2 young brothers, 15 and 16 years old. They're also on death row. The group of artists from that video that went viral with the individuals just walking onto the screen and taking their hijab off or supporting kind of the movement in Iran, they're all on death row.
Well-known actresses and...
yeah. And then just one final stat that I just want to talk about real quick. Between the 23rd and the 28th, which is just in the last 5 days, there's been 13 executions that have taken place. So in a matter of 5 days, we've heard and seen. And we know these numbers are higher. These are just ones that we can actually accurately say have taken place.
About the Sohaila Golestani and Hamid Purazeri, those theater actor and actors that they got arrested. I mean, we've talked about this a lot on this roundtable. That, like, in these days, being in Evin is like a badge of honor, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they by arresting them, they just motivate other people to do more, you know.
The sheer aggregate level of talent that's in Evin right now.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, on the plus side, or on the flip side of all of this, there is action being planned and being taken, not just in the diaspora, but inside Iran.
That's right.
Despite the bloody crackdowns, as we keep saying, you know, no matter what the regime tries, it can't stop the will of the people. And so there's actually going to be, there's a call for national strikes next week, right?
Right. Yeah. It's 14, 15, 16 آذر, which is going to be
5th, 6th, and 7th, I think, of December.
You know, all of which is to say the movement continues in Iran, and national strikes, if it happens on a national level, stores closed, production stops. That's a big deal.
That's right.
That's the next level. That's what we've been talking about and waiting for.
Yeah, and it's what we keep saying from weeks ago about the chips falling into place and each one of them being, you know, indicative of this revolution moving one step forward. So, and we saw it a couple weeks back when they had the national strikes, and we talked about it on the last show about, you know, last weekend being one of the most influential with the truck unions truck union and a lot of the steel workers and things like that. So hopefully we'll see the same thing next week.
All right.
بیشباد.
Let's go to our, are we good for the Roqe Roundtable?
I think so.
You know, I was just going to, one final note about the World Cup. You remember a year ago or months and months ago, I was confused about what to do because for the
With
first
your
time in my
teams.
life, the three countries that I identify with, the country I was born in, England, the country I live in, and I'm a citizen of Canada as well as England, and the country of my ancestry, Iran, were all in the World Cup. And it was a big question. What am I going to do? Well, it certainly worked itself out,
It
didn't it?
did, yeah. We all know who you're
Canada
rooting
is
for.
the only country other than Qatar that didn't get a point in the World Cup. God love them. And Iran, you know, the circumstances be what they are. You know, I've got the three lions left, my Team England.
Do you have appetite for following England?
I do. I mean, I it's the same appetite I have for watching Arsenal. It's everything's muted in these days of the revolution. You can't sort of throw yourself into anything, but I'll still watch, and I'll still they're really good boys. I love these English boys. They're a young team, and good for them. You know, I don't know if they'll actually get that far, to be honest, but we'll see. Thank you, Darya.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pegah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shaya. Let's go to our first guest. You guys exit, and we're going to bring in our first guest into the Roqe studio here. My first guest is an Iranian Canadian life coach, a motivational speaker, and a stress recovery specialist. Solmaz Barghgir is the host of the podcast Lam Ta Kalam, and the person behind the popular Instagram page Solmaz Barghgir Coach. She has been working diligently to produce helpful content regarding the current situation in Iran for the last 10 weeks. Right now, Solmaz Barghgir joins me live in the Roqe studio. Hello.
Hi, Jian.
Nice to have you here.
Same. My pleasure.
So, I'm first of all, it's nice to have you. I have a stress recovery specialist here. I should think that you're in high demand.
I should take that off now.
Yeah, well, it's going to get you in trouble because there's a lot of people who need help. What has life been like for an Iranian Canadian life coach and stress recovery specialist during this period of great emotional extremities as the uprising continues in Iran?
It's been very challenging, like anyone else. Jian, the day that I got the news, the picture of Mahsa in bed in ICU in hospital in Tehran, I made a very intentional decision that do I want to be here or not? And it was very sad that I was like, at the time...
Sorry, here being...
Here in public, on social
in
media.
In this
space, exactly. Yeah. And at the time, none of us would even imagine it will turn to a huge revolution / uprising and this much of effects on everyone. So I sat down. I always write. I ask my followers, my clients, just write it down and think about it. And I reflected on it. And I knew that if I start posting the first photo, I'm all in the space.
How did you know that? Or why did you think that?
You can't just... right now they say that there's no white and black and white. You can't be gray, blah, blah, blah. But it's so obvious. You can't just... At least I cannot be like that. I'm always all in or out. I make my decisions and intentions. And the consequence would be never going back to Iran, right?
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I took my son, who is half Iranian, half Canadian, to Iran 4 years ago. He has good memories. But what's more important for me right now? And one of my values is to be for other people, right? That's why I chose this career. So I talked with my husband. I said, if I do this, I may never be able to go back. And he said, it's your choice. He loves going there skiing.
Your husband is Canadian. He's not Iranian.
No,
right?
he's not
Yes.
Iranian.
Yeah. And once you were in, you were all in.
I was all in.
It's, there's a lot of language around this during this revolution, during this period for the last 2 months, 2.5 months, which is, this is no time to be on the fence. The time has come. This is, pick your side. But which normally I don't appreciate that kind of lack of nuance, but it feels like it has to be this way. I mean, if it's a revolution, then
exactly
you can't sort of put one foot on either side. There are still people doing that, but it seems very difficult to me.
Yeah, it is difficult. For me, it's difficult too, even to look at it. But you know what? Ironically, you look at the footage, images in protests in Tehran, in any city in Iran, you see that even people, those who are just watching, they're standbyers, they get hit.
Yes.
So it really, the nature of this revolution has no logic.
Yes.
That you say, oh, I'm just looking, I'm just watching, I'm a bystander to see how it will go.
Yes.
You're either in, you're in drop. I always said, we are all a drop of the whole movement.
Well, if you're little Kian Pirfalak, you're in a car with your family driving along, you're not in the middle of a demonstration, and then you're dead all of a sudden at 10 years old. This isn't entirely new to you. You were an activist back in Iran, and you were out on the streets during the Green Movement and ended up sleeping in a garbage bin.
I'm not sure who told you that.
But it's true, isn't it? Do I have that right?
Yes.
So that was to avoid authorities? I mean, tell me a bit about your own background in terms of speaking out in Iran.
Jian, I was waiting for my immigration application to Canada to be completed, to come to Canada for 8 years, 7.5 to be precise. So exactly that Green Movement happened 6 months before my visa comes. Okay, so it was a very, very not wise, and my dad, if he hears me right now, would be very mad at me, because at the time he was telling me, if your visa comes, they will do police check, and you're in street, they arrest you, you're in trouble. You can't even come to Canada. And my whole family used to be here for years. So, but I couldn't. I can't say I could not sit at home. And it was a very terrible, terrifying, traumatizing night that I ran away from. I could just see they were not Iranian. They were huge, tall, scary men speaking in Arabic in the street.
Who is this? The Basij or some?
I don't know who they were, but they were just.
They were coming after protesters during the Green Movement.
Yeah.
And how did you end up in a garbage bin?
When you're scared not to be killed or arrested, in Tehran there are huge garbage bins, city garbage bins. They're for shahdari, and it was 3 of us. 2 of us jumped in one of them. I stayed for 4 hours till I could hear there's nothing else there, and I could see how unhumanistic, nothing. They don't feel anything. Right now, I can feel it, Jian.
Yeah.
I can feel it. I feel when I listen to your content, speaking to kids, youth in all over the cities in Iran.
Yeah.
I feel that.
You identify with them. I mean, it sounds like, given the instincts that you have, were you in Iran right now, you would be on the front lines?
I guess I would. I have friends back home, they say that they're making jokes. They say, thank God you're there. Otherwise, you would come every night with your car, pick us up, take us to the front line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it hard to not be there on that level?
I'm doing a lot right now. I should acknowledge that. I have stopped whatever I was doing before.
Yes.
On social media,
Yes.
if you scroll down on my content, it was all pinky, happy, do this, do that,
Yes.
relationship, stress relief, blah, blah, blah. Right now, it's all focus on your goal. Don't get yourself distracted with garbage content. Just be focused. Don't get disappointed, stuff like that.
So let me ask you about that. I mean, this is the reason you're here, because you've been observing and interacting with your audience and coming up with conclusions, I'm sure, about what you've found. How is the deluge of horrific images and ongoing difficult news coming out of Iran affecting us mentally and emotionally?
It's in the worst way that it could be. It's very traumatizing for all of us. And Jian, I want to tell you, us people out of Iran, because all my clients are Iranian clients, are the Iranian who have immigrated all over the world. So I'm talking with them.
So you don't have clients in Iran?
No.
They're all outside of
Outside of Iran. And when I speak with them, their problem is that they consume a lot of footage, pictures,
Yes.
everything. It's unbelievable how much they're just consuming, and they feel they're doing nothing. They just get drowned, like everyone. We get drowned in the sadness, in anger, in unfairness, everything. And the worst part is that we go to our trauma, we go back, it's like triggers. It hooks us to back to our traumas. The first week, Jian, I was a screwed up person. Like the smell of garbage there that night, everything the number of times that morality cops had arrested me, and my fear of what if my parents will find out that I was, how should I explain that to them? Right?
Yes.
Why I wasn't at class in the university.
But we're all, I mean, I actually have Dr. K coming up in a little while, and he's somebody who's been, he's got a huge following, and he's been trying to help people, and not just people in Iran, but all of us. So he did a whole thing on insomnia, which I want to ask him about, because so many of us are not sleeping.
No.
And it's no surprise. I mean, every study tells you that if you look at your screen before you go to bed, and in our case, if you're scrolling through horrific images, how are you supposed to have a restful sleep? But what's the prescription out of that? I mean, are we supposed to, would you say we shouldn't look at this stuff?
We cannot look and just stop looking at those
Exactly.
stuff, right?
It actually feels on some level irresponsible to not be knowing what's going on.
Yeah. At the same time, we are responsible for our own mental health and sanity.
Okay.
If I want to be effective in this movement, I should be a person who can analyze stuff. I can't just jump in the mud and believe that I'm responsible. That's not being responsible. Being responsible is, I always say, garbage in, garbage out. There is a very nonsense proverb in Farsi. They say that, az in gush begir, az un gush bede bere, meaning that get it from one ear and just leave it, throw it out. No. Our brain should be sanitized from all the garbage stuff. So for me, Jian, the first thing, when I see that view thing alarm on the bottom of any Instagram videos, I don't hit on them. I just read the description, and I intentionally make decision. Do I want to watch this? How can it serve me? And how can I serve my followers here, my audience? What can I do here? And I always tell my followers, you want to be effective? Go to my stories. I have all the hashtags you should do, mass emails. Tell me anything that we need to be doing to be effective. Yes. I'm providing you there.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. What do we really gain from seeing the same horrible images over and over again?
And I'm going to confess here. The first week I was a mess person.
Yes.
I don't know if you know that I'm studying masters in counseling psychology, and one thing that was very helpful to me was one of my the trauma professor we have. I was speaking with him and just opened up and told him what's going on with me. The first thing he said, you guys are all experiencing post-trauma, whatever has happened to you back home.
Yes.
So put a filter. Put a strong filter for your brain, for your mental space. What are you going to consume? And go based on that. Make sure what he asked me, what is your purpose here? I said, I want to make sure my followers are aligned with the news. I want to make sure that they don't get this cyber attacks that we have on Instagram.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, let's get to that. But let me just push back gently on this idea of not looking at some stuff. I mean, isn't part of our imperative to be informed? And so we have to look at a bunch of different things and decide what's credible to us, what we want to be informed about, so that we can continue to play a role in supporting those in Iran. I mean, I say that fully cognizant of the fact that how does it help to know that 2 more people are going to be executed today, and here they are, and whatever. But the whole slogan of say her name is, the underpinning of that is, let's know who they are, let's remember them, let's say their names. Well, if we're not looking at it, we can't do that, right?
No.
And so, I mean, the extreme version of this, which is, I just can't deal with that, I'm not looking at it, let's go to the party, that doesn't work for me, because it's like, what responsibility do we have to our families, our ancestors, our culture of, our country of heritage, all of that? Certainly some responsibility when people are being shot in the streets, I would think. Yeah. So where is the line?
The line is, you brought up a very legit example. Like you cannot not look at the pictures because you need to say their name. But that's not the main part that our energy drains and we get involved with stuff. Tell me, what was the benefit of being involved with the news around soccer for the last 10
I agree with you.
So
who's singing the anthem, who isn't singing the anthem?
Or who is that?
Who gives a fuck?
Stupid woman who came and said, talked in English, in a broken English, baba lied, baba.
Well, so there is some place for humor, but
you're
right.
No,
you're right.
Somewhere else.
You're right. Yeah.
So a little bit prior to this whole World Cup soccer game start, like 2 days prior, I wrote down again, what's my intention? Do I want to spread the news about this? Do I want to expand around this news or not? And NO was my answer. And I have not consumed, read, watched, or spread even one picture around that.
Yeah,
intentionally.
I mean,
and how much Jian,
it's okay.
Jian, I really protected my sanity by that. Like, my followers would send me pictures, delete. This is not what focus. We are focusing on strikes.
Yeah.
We are focusing on many people who are in the prison. We are focusing on creating content that will help. And I created a lot of content on brainwash, because we have been brainwashed.
Yeah, let me get to that. I was just going to say, I just said it on our roundtable that I was really, this is why I want to be very clear, and I'm not shy to say it, I really wanted Iran to lose, to exit the World Cup, to stop the distraction. I mean, it had just become, I don't know who it was benefiting other than maybe the regime. I don't even think for the players it was a pleasant experience. It just, the whole thing sucked, but certainly it was if the conversation is about, well, which guy is singing and who isn't, and it's not about what's happening in Iran.
No, it's
and
not.
So it's really I agree
exactly.
that better that be done with. Talk to me about brainwashing. What are you referencing when you say we've been brainwashed?
For the last 2-3 months since beginning of this revolution, I had some challenges to create contents that are exactly aligned with this movement. At the same time, we can apply them in our personal lives, in our relationships. Okay. And this brainwash came last week when I noticed, wow, people are so consumed with, instead of talking about this person who has been arrested, the other person, I'm not an activist, Jian. I'm not an activist. I'm a human being who sees stuff and the effect of trauma, stress, and relationships and communications on our quality of lives. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, what's happening? And I started doing some research about it, watching videos about documentaries around the Second World War and how they made people to fight against human beings killing each other. And I came to brainwashing. And I can see that how it's very simple. It's very simple. They start picking some reliable, trusted characters all over the world, people we love, like our soccer players. We used to love them, right? Bring them like piece of, I don't know, I don't want to, as a trap. Put them there. Did you have any doubts that they have been tortured mentally to go play there? Of course they have been. That wasn't their will. And it's so clear, but people were like, how dare you, did this, how dare you saw the president, and all this is what? Is anger, is feeling sad, disappointed.
So, I'm sorry, which part are we brainwashed? Are we brainwashed to?
We brainwashed to expand around this kind of news. We brainwashed that.
To think that for this to be something we care about.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
Opposed to, well, this is that's such an interesting, because people have made this argument, and I think it's quite powerful, that the regime enjoyed all the conversation about the World Cup because it was taking people's minds off, their massacre in Zahedan or whatever.
Exactly. They did that. Exactly. And they were talking about people being arrested in Qatar because Islamic Republic has sent people there. Who cares?
Well, we've been talking about that.
And it's not something. Yeah, I saw that.
Well, I mean, it's a big deal. Isn't that a big deal?
Yeah, it is a big deal.
That a World Cup is taking place in another country, supposedly a sovereign country to Iran, and yet Iranians are being detained or injured or whatever because they were wearing a Women Life Freedom T-shirt.
Did you have
which, by the way, you're now allowed to wear?
Of course, because
now that Iran is out.
Over.
I mean, come on.
I know, but why do we get surprised? I have actually an episode on podcast. Don't get surprised over the stuff that are facts. Iran and Qatar have good relationships.
Yes.
There was no doubt. Did you have any doubt that they would not support Iran's regime?
I didn't know the extent to which they would go to not let people wear those T-shirts and things.
Oh,
I mean, that surprised.
They bailed
you know why? Because supposedly these things. Because it wasn't just Qatar; it was FIFA making these decisions. So you've got the bromance with Qatar and Iran, but then you've got FIFA in bed with them as well. Because FIFA sanctioned all of that. we're not allowed political messaging, and etc. But now that Iran's gone,
conveniently. Yeah. And what's the benefit of even thinking about them, right?
Yeah.
We got one good lesson. Nobody except ourselves can do something for our country. Nobody. Not FIFA, not UNICEF, We ask for help. We welcome help. We appreciate their help. We thank them for their help. But it's not that we are going to rely on their help.
All right.
Same as has happened in.
But we don't need them helping the.
We do not want them helping them.
I mean that's the meme, as I said in my opening essay. It's we don't want you to save us. We just want you to stop saving the regime. right? I mean, that's and there is an important distinction, and that's part of the idea of the support. It's like get rid of your ambassadors. Tell these people, isolate this country. Do what you have to do, and that doesn't seem to be totally happening yet. It really is. I think when we talk about trauma and how damaging this is, the feeling of Iranians being alone. I mean, it's been nice to see some celebrities come out and say, let's support Iranian women, etc. But there's still a feeling of loneliness in terms of when this happens in Iran, it doesn't get the attention it does in other countries.
Exactly. So right now, Jian, it dawned on me about some things, because many times I'm extremely factful and I don't get my emotions to be engaged in this. In this scenario, it's because I was there in Green Movement, and I did not see that much of other people in whole world's support. I saw that my friends were arrested. Oh my God, I don't want to go there. It was brutal. And
not as brutal as this moment.
No, but it can be worse too.
Yeah.
And right now, my as a human being, what's on me is to spread the news, the ones that they serve our fellow Iranians.
What's an example of that? What's the news we should be spreading?
Like right now, what is helping right now? The 3 days we will have on strike.
The protests,
and what is what does it mean to go on strike? It means don't go to do unnecessary shopping, and it means that later on, when the strike is over, from your perspective, don't go over shop, right? Mm-hmm. Figure it out. This is revolution. It's not normal life. We are not supposed to have normal life. Do you have normal life right now? Do you have your income? Do you have how you used to live, Jian?
Not me, no.
Not me. I don't. Mm-hmm. I don't. My life is upside down. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing that we need to talk about it constantly.
When you talk about your concern about the spread of false information in social media, what's an example of what you're referencing in terms of false information?
The other day I could swear to God they were not normal people. They were cyber attack or something like that. More than, Jian, in less than 2 hours, more than 70 messages, direct messages on my Instagram that UN people are coming to Tehran tomorrow. The committee of UN, swear to God, different formats. Mm-hmm. And Solmaz, you have good audience. People are listening to you. Let's tell your army. They call my followers that they do stuff, and tell them to go in front of the embassy of Switzerland and do protest there. And I'm like, what the?
Wow! So you got cyber trolled by presumably this could be from the regime or something saying that the UN is playing ball, is going to Tehran and spread this information?
Yeah, and it wasn't just me. I asked a couple of other influencers, people who I know with high numbers of followers.
And who was sending this out? You couldn't tell that they were.
I just want to tell you, no, but I blocked like good 200 accounts that day. Yeah, I noticed that. Okay, good to know. And I was like, hold on, who announced that they created the team, the whole committee? There is no committee. They haven't elected anyone. Yesterday, last night I was listening to one of your latest podcasts, and there was a gentleman in Oslo.
Yes,
you were asking him about the committee. There was no committee. And second, why you should go? Oh, another thing, it's safe in front of the embassy of Switzerland. You have immunity. You can do whatever you want. No, you can't. What are you talking about? Right. And I saw some people spread that.
So so that seems like an obvious one where you could cross-check that. But there is information that comes out that we don't necessarily know.
It comes.
And there is an instinct, I mean, certainly on the part of some of the folks I follow, to want to spread it, to say, this is what's happening.
If I don't
especially
Google
when it's particularly alarming information.
100%, those stories with alarm and ringing the bells and stuff like that. Yeah. If I have time, I will Google it myself. I will do my due diligence. Otherwise, I would ask them, okay, send me the post, send me the website, send me the link. I want to see where did you bring this. And 80% there is nothing.
What issues are coming up with your clients, with the people you speak to, with respect to the last 10 weeks?
And the first 3 weeks, it was just crying. And I'm not counseling people, I'm coaching people. And it was very, very overwhelming. It was just crying. They would come in front of me, men and women, and like we are doing Zoom meetings. Just crying. And they had this guilty feeling. Mostly it's guilty feeling. I'm doing nothing. My parents are there, my friends are there, this is it, and I talk about it, I get goosebumps. And I could understand them. I had the same feeling. And then it came anger, right? Now I'm trying to tell them that all I'm telling them that we are in the most important part, the period of time in the history of not Iran's history, but the world's history. Find your mission. Instead of crying, being angry, see how can you use this energy and do something, even one step forward. And if you have guilty feeling, it means that you're just draining your energy somewhere that is useless.
Do you think everybody believes that it's the most crucial moment in world history?
Oh, isn't it?
I think it's really, I think it's up there. But I mean, I think that's part of the challenge, that there's still people out there rolling their eyes, especially the international community, kind of going, well, this will probably peter out soon. You know, they've done this a few times.
There are always those kind of people. From week one, I was doing it. I was telling my followers, I told my clients too. One of my followers created this QR code with Mahsa Amini's picture, and I spread it in my neighborhood, my son's school, teacher, principal. I had meetings. I still have chats with them. I always go 10 minutes before I talk with parents there. You know what? We need to spread the word.
Yes.
If I'm miserable, it's not because just in Iran, somewhere on the other side of the world, some people are miserable. No, this is closer than your breath. It comes to you. It will come to everyone in the world, right? And I'm making the case like the other day I was talking to my son's teacher. I told her, I said, you know what? This is the problem of Iranian women there. But sooner than you think, it will be our problem here. As you can see in U.S., they're getting one step at a time. The rise
regressing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
A final question to you. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to this, but you've talked about the importance of recognizing that we're going to have different opinions.
Yeah.
We're in a bit of a struggle, it seems to me, about right now in terms of the diaspora, where we know that unity is important. If you ask me, there are some folks out there who are actually sowing the seeds of disunity intentionally to help the regime. But part of where we get in trouble is people yelling at each other because they have different opinions or ideas about everything from which way forward for the strikes to do we support Team Melli or not. How do we fix that?
That's a golden question, actually. The thing is, we should know that we haven't been taught to agree to disagreements. We haven't been taught to respect different ideas. We haven't been taught in our culture, in Iranian culture.
Yeah.
We're
not so good at that, huh?
No. If Jian says something that I don't agree with, it doesn't mean Jian is my enemy. Have you seen that picture that you stand there, I'm in front of you, you're looking at 9, I'm looking at 6. Right? It's exactly like that right now. And I have learned in a very difficult way that I cannot convince everyone, but I can be the example I want to be. I can be the one that if later on I look back at myself, I will say I did my best.
So you're the coach. How do I when I disagree with someone, I'm getting angry with them, and I want to say, you're not part of the revolution. I don't know what.
Choose your battles, Jian. Choose your battles. But sometimes it works that I convince Jian, right? Because I see that he's not pretending he's sleeping. خودشو به خواب نزده. He really wants to understand, realize, comprehend, and make a change. But some people, they just want to argue. It's your choice if you want to be involved with this, engage yourself, right? We have certain amount of energy every day, and it's our choice how to use it.
But if somebody were to say, I think we should negotiate with the regime.
Who's we?
Reforms are possible.
They tell me a lot.
If somebody says that, like an opinion that I just think is so idiotic at this point, or not based in any reality, what am I it doesn't seem right to go, well, let's agree to disagree.
No,
you're right, we can negotiate with the regime.
No, it's not like that. It has happened a lot to me recently. People come to me and talk about, I made a post about it actually. Go, oh, you know what, we should do this, we should negotiate with, and I always say, who is we? Oh, we, us as people. I'm like, okay. I always refer them to a couple of the episodes of Roqe Media that you have been talking with kids in street.
Yes.
And I say, if someone wants to negotiate, it's them, not you. It's them. Just sitting here, having your tea, having a bite of chocolate and talking about what you want to happen in Iran does not entitle you. Okay? And I always ask them, who is we? You want to do it? Go ahead, negotiate. How can you negotiate? Instead of thinking that he's actually going to make the negotiation. That's the problem, actually.
Yes, but that wasn't my point. I get your point. That's an important one, which is self-determination for Iranians and et cetera, but inside Iran. But my point was, if somebody says, on the disagreeing opinions thing, if somebody says something that is profoundly at odds, I believe, with this revolution happening or not, how am I supposed to contend with that if we're all trying to
it
agree
really
to
depends
disagree?
Who's that somebody, Jian. It's really, if that person is part of your team, you need to reevaluate your values, their values, and if you want to work with them. But if it's someone that you see in Loblaws in flower shop, you can just pass by that person. You have certain amount of energy in a day. You cannot just waste it on everyone, right? That's how, Jian, I always say that COVID helped me to filter plenty of people around myself, because they were going against, it wasn't about just going partying or not. I'm talking about values. This revolution has done something to me emotionally. Like it has touched deeply inside some stuff about my values. I can see everything crystal clear right now. I'm not saying whatever I'm doing is right. No, I do as I have learned. But regarding to people around me, forget it. If I see a sign, that's a sign. I'm not going to waste my time on that people. I'm not going to hang out with those kind of people. And I'm going to be laser focused on my goal.
Solmaz, thank you so much. It's nice to have you here. I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate how hard you've been working on trying to help through this revolution. I know a lot of people appreciate that. Thanks for doing this today.
Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
This dream I'm dreaming, won't you wake me up tonight? 'Cause this life I'm living doesn't really feel like mine. This strange dream I'm dreaming, if it ain't wrong, it don't feel right. Never thought you were leaving. I never thought I'd have to start again.
This is Roqe, episode 220, part of our Uprising series. For all the previous episodes of this series and all Roqe programming, you can go to our website, roqemedia.com, roqemedia.com. This is the Uprising. Dear West, can you offer more than lip service? I want to go to upstate New York now, and a very special guest. My next guest is an Iranian-American doctor who came to international fame and social media stardom as an essential medical voice during the COVID pandemic for Iranians around the world, and especially those inside Iran. Dr. Kayvan Mirhadi, also known as Dr. K, is the chief of internal medicine at the Clifton Springs Hospital in the Rochester, New York area. Dr. K has now been offering critical online medical advice to thousands of people injured in demonstrations in Iran. He's also connecting protesters with trusted doctors in Iran. And right now, Dr. Kayvan Mirhadi, Dr. K, joins me from upstate New York. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jian. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you. How are you holding up?
Good. One day at a time. You know, it's tough, but I'm losing track of time now, but it's going.
I can imagine it's a 24/7 pursuit for many of us, but certainly in terms of what you're doing. You know, I wanted to just set the stage for what goes on in Iran, and one of the most troubling parts of this uprising in Iran is realizing the fact that victims of the regime's crackdown and brutality are fearful of going to the hospital because they may be arrested if they go there. I suppose it's a bit absurd to try to assess the ethics of what this regime does, but there must be international standards about medical care without danger, is there not?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Geneva Convention or World Health Organization, they speak of patient privacy. They speak of the right of every human being to access healthcare at any time. And during the last several weeks, that's not really the case in Iran. People are scared to go to the hospital. The doctors are scared to take care of the patients that are injured during the protests. It's I've been calling it the medical crisis in Iran.
Yeah, and I imagine you're not just hearing from the patients or the victims who need your help, but from the doctors as well, who are caught somehow in the middle.
Yeah, it's a tough job when you can't do your job. You know, these doctors swore an oath, the Hippocratic oath, to take care of any human being at any time with their beliefs, sexual orientation, the political relations, and they cannot perform their duties. So they are conflicted as well. It hasn't been publicized to a fact that, you know, you cannot treat patients that are like injured protesters, but it's understood as a whole. So, you know, most healthcare providers in Iran have been doing it, but undercover. A lot of them have been arrested and imprisoned and even beaten up. There's been so many cases of, CEOs and medical directors being in ICUs because they were merely protecting patient privacy. And this, once the news gets out there, a lot of doctors are fearful of doing so. So it's just a horrific situation right now.
And I think if I remember correctly in my history, that even during wartime, even in the most vicious of wars, medical units are generally considered neutral territory that you're not supposed to mess with, right? That you're not supposed to violate.
Exactly. I mean, anybody injured, you have the right to get medical care, and that's understood even during wartime. And this is an internal conflict that's been going on for several weeks, and obviously people get hurt, but they're just so fearful of going to the hospital. They come to their house, and if they know a trusted doctor, they'll contact them. But again, if we lived in Iran right now, it would be hard to trust anybody. So yeah. They've been reaching out to me and my friends and other doctors and nurses on social media and asking questions about their injuries.
Okay, so speaking of doctors needing to do their job, you have a day gig, which is a significant one, Chief of Internal Medicine. I would imagine that keeps you quite busy. You've had thousands of people inside Iran reach out to you for medical care and advice. How have you been managing all of this?
So I'm not alone. Obviously, there are so many doctors doing it. My page just has the most followers, and it's seen more. But there are a lot of doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals doing this, and I want to give them props for everybody for doing this. But it's been very busy because we also have two kids. My wife, honestly, she's been helping out a lot. She's also involved in the page, and she triages a lot of these messages and sends me, the ones that are critical. And we did put out information about including SOS at the bottom of your message, so it gets seen first. Because I still get messages about coronavirus and other illnesses, but right now I've been really responding to the issues that the injured protesters have. But it's just been very, very, very busy for us.
Right. I love that you use the medical terms rather than say she edits. She triages. I guess you're stuck in the hospital. That's the language you're going to use. Can I ask you, from your perspective? It seems like, devastatingly so, horrifically so. It seems like things are getting more brutal in terms of the crackdown. We're hearing more about more deaths. We have situations like Zahedan and Kurdistan more recently, where it seems like there's just wanton mass killings. We hear about more injuries than we were hearing about, and deaths than we were hearing about in the first 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. Do you have any sense of, in terms of the response you're getting, the demand that is coming into your inbox, of whether this situation is getting a lot worse?
I think what's changed is the reachability of the type of people that are getting injured. Like those areas do not have great access to internet and Instagram and social media. So I'm not able to help them as much. It's just getting very difficult to reach these individuals. And it's very unfortunate because the healthcare there is very protected to the point that they cannot even bring medication or medical care to that area because the roads have been blocked from any type of transportation. So I do keep communication with people that live around that area, but they're telling me there's shortage of medical equipment, there's shortages of antibiotics, any type of medication, and they want to send it to them so they can take care of themselves, but they cannot because all the roads are blocked. So people are finding very creative alternative methods of delivery of medical care, which boggles the mind that this is actually happening in this day and age. But that's really what a lot of us doctors and healthcare professionals have been involved in the last few weeks, because the crackdowns are getting more severe in isolated areas where we cannot really reach them.
Yeah, you were doing this kind of work in terms of providing online advice and help and care during COVID. Was it an obvious or natural segue once this uprising began to be doing the kind of work you're doing now?
That was more kind of education, because everybody could still, if they had some severe COVID and they needed to be evaluated by a physician, they could simply just walk down the street to the nearest emergency room, or they all had doctors where they could go see. So my position was mainly awareness of vaccination and decreasing fear of what a pandemic is and how deadly this virus is. A lot of Iran, unfortunately, I think it was the epicenter of, false information, and it would just radiate through the social media. So I was very involved in debunking myths. But right now it's a whole different game that I'm involved in. And it's very difficult because at times it feels like my hands are tied. There's so much I can help somebody in terms of their injury. For example, like if you have a first degree or second degree burn, or if you have pellets in your body because you were running away from the authorities, I can kind of guide you towards the first aid and the main things you can do. But if it goes beyond that, like if you get very very sick. You go into septic shock, you go into renal failure. These are things I cannot provide. So we've been working with doctors in Iran that have been going into these individuals' houses and helping them, or hospitals that are accommodating them. There are a lot of doctors that are falsifying diagnosis, which again, this is unheard of, because you could lose your license. It's malpractice to falsify diagnosis, but their hands are tied. They're putting, removing a tumor from somebody's knee where they're removing a bullet. So everybody is trying to find ways to save lives, to help humanity, but they are making it more difficult.
Let me ask you about some medical specifics, or some specifics of what you have to deal with in terms of what you've just said as well. You mentioned pellets. We hear a lot about the use of pellet guns. Can you describe a little bit about what that is and what the implications of wounds coming from pellet shots are?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the BB gun, but there's different tiers of them, and there's different sizes of pellets. And the ones that are being used most often are bird shots, and these include, with every shot, there are multiple small, tiny pellets that essentially propel into the air, and individuals end up suffering from multiple entry points, anywhere from 10 to 50 to 100 to 300. And the more wounds you have in your body, the more the inside of your body is exposed to the outside world. And that's when you can get infected, your blood pressure can drop, and you could essentially die. And the pellets themselves, they're not like an actual gun, like a bullet from a gun where they can, break bones or shear arteries. But again, like depending on the distance where you get shot from, they could. I mean, if it's very close shot, it could still penetrate like an artery, and there could be internal hematoma and bleeding. So they could be very dangerous. I've heard so many cases where people got shot in their chest, and it causes something called a pneumothorax, where your lung essentially collapses. And if you're not treating this right away, it could press on your heart and cause a hemodynamic instability. I don't want to use as much medical terms, but essentially you can go into cardiac arrest. So these things, I talk to people that have happened this to them because of this shot.
There also seems to be quite a lot of incidents of people losing eyes or getting shot in the eyes. Is that the same pellets we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, if you get multiple pellets in your eye, essentially, and it injures your retina or your optic nerve, which is like the large nerve that carries all your, the images that you see, then that eye you cannot save. And then there is a risk of infection happening in the ocular orbit, so they have to remove the eye completely. So these individuals end up getting a glass eye for, aesthetic reasons.
Dr. K, what have you heard? What do you know about? I saw one of your posts about it, so I know you've thought about it somewhat. What do you know about this? The news about gases, some kind of poisonous gases, or some kind of chemical agent that has been used?
It's not clear because it's a lot of it is coming from images that people took on their phone. Really, for us to know what gas it was, you need somebody like a chemical engineer to analyze the gas and let us know what's inside of it. But there was a lot of, I think it was last week, there was a tweet going around from one of the protests in the street that there was a green gas, and a lot of them compared it to chemical warfare. I mean, it's possible that they're using it. A lot of the symptoms that people report to me are not typical tear gas symptoms, when they have issues with their breathing, when they have these rashes that appear on their skin, because tear gases were being used even, in other countries. We just did not see similar symptoms. So there's suspicion that there could be other chemicals used in these confrontations.
We've been talking about physical injuries. There's a fair bit of psychological harm happening to people. Do people contact you about trauma of that kind as well?
Yeah, I mean, the most unfortunate are I've had several cases of women in these protests that they've been attacked and arrested and essentially sexually assaulted or raped. Obviously, these women are all going through psychological trauma. Anybody involved in this movement right now will have PTSD, anxiety, depression, difficulty sleeping. Individuals that are arrested and they get released, I'm sure you've seen it. Many of them commit suicide after because they unclear what goes on when they're arrested because we don't really know.
Kids, in some cases, teenagers, they've been committing suicide.
I've even had people message me like, "Oh, my brother just got released from jail and he's just sleeping for several days or weeks, and I don't know, maybe he was injected with something while he was arrested." It's just it's very hard for me to tell what they're doing to these individuals that are arrested, but it's having serious consequences.
I mean, there are lots of people facing horrific injuries inside Iran, but there is something that Iranians are experiencing everywhere in the world. Everyone we talk to on this program in the diaspora, and that is, I call it doom scrolling through all the horrible news, and there's a lot of insomnia going on. A lot of people, including myself, are having trouble sleeping. You recently posted a video about how to deal with lack of sleep. Can you describe some of what you said?
Yeah, essentially, from everyday trauma that we're going through, we're all going to have issues with sleeping. So some of the basic things that I posted were, distance yourself from your phone, even if that's for a day. That's treatment on its own, because just getting exposed to daily news that are coming out, just seeing people's pain and suffering is going to affect your well-being. Lack of sleep is not just going to be manifesting itself in you being tired. There's so many physiological things associated with a proper 6 to 7 hours of sleep every night. So you're going to notice hair loss, issues with your blood pressure, cardiovascular effects. So sleep is fundamental for all of us to be able to carry on. If our mission is to help the people of Iran, help this movement, we need to be healthy ourselves. So a lot of things included in that post were essentially the main point was distance yourself from the news for a day or so to revive, but also some practical things like do not eat before you go to bed, do not go to the gym half an hour before you want to go to sleep. If you can't sleep, and let's say you're lying down and you're not falling asleep, don't just lie in your bed. Get up, walk around, do something else, and then come back and try it again. I'm guilty of that. I just lie down for 2 hours waiting for me to fall asleep, and that never happens. And then I talked about a few medications that can help, and the main one is melatonin, which is the safest one to try.
You talk about people helping folks in Iran, and we've seen, and you've mentioned that it's not just you. There are other doctors and nurses and of Iranian stripes, but also doctors around the world stepping up for Iran. You posted a video from a group called Doctors for Iran 22 last week. Tell me what you've been seeing in terms of doctors across the globe joining this cause.
Everyone is unifying, and their mission is to help all the doctors and nurses and medical professionals around the world. There are a few groups being formed in US and Canada and in Europe, and they essentially have WhatsApp groups, they have Telegram or Instagram, and they want to promote their page in terms of being able to help people in Iran. The one that I was very involved in is a group called MASA that kind of started in US, but it also has physicians from around the world. And they did come up with a phone number where they are taking shifts on throughout the day 24/7 to answer that phone, and they allow anybody to call from Iran. If they're in need, they can call and they'll be connected to a doctor who's going to guide them towards what to do.
I'm so grateful that you've given us this time, and that we get to hear your insights, and I know there's so many folks who are following you and appreciating what you do. Let me end off by asking you a couple of personal questions, if I can. First of all, I mean, we just talked about insomnia and the trauma that people are dealing with, and you were prescribing taking a day off, looking at what's going on. That doesn't seem like something you afford for yourself. How are you managing the emotions of dealing with all of this? It's
really hard. Honestly, it's something I've never experienced in my life. I grew up outside of Iran. I moved when I was 12 years of age. I grew up in Toronto, Canada. And I, it was hard for me to connect to what's going to Iran at that age. And then when I got involved with this page over the last 3 years, yeah, it's just accumulating. I feel the pain of Iranian people every day. During Corona, I really felt that because they felt so isolated. They were one of the only countries that they were begging for a vaccine, and because of political issues, they were not, they were going to offer them the Pfizer vaccine, but they refused it so it just accumulates for me. And over the last several weeks, it's very hard to deal with my emotions. Like, I don't know how. I feel like I'm helping, but at the same time, I feel like I'm so far away that if I was there, I would be of more help. So I'm trying to deal with my current emotions, and it's very hard. So what I do recommend whoever asks me right now is to get a therapist and really talk it over with a therapist and talk about your feelings and what are your plans. And I focus on things that I can accomplish. For example, today for me was to, go to the gym, try to answer questions that people are asking me. And next is to go see my family and do things at work. It's hard to think about what's going to happen tomorrow or next week because everything is uncertain right now. So my advice would be talk to somebody like a professional therapist. Don't talk to another person who's losing their mind with what's going on. And then really focus on what you can accomplish today and then worry about tomorrow.
Well, I certainly hear you on being a Toronto kid who, or at least for most of your life, and who feels extremely connected to Iran right now and is feeling that connection to the people inside Iran. Tell me what what's the hardest part of what you do? I know that doctors are very practiced at not getting too emotional because it would be a job liability in terms of what you have to face. But have you been crying? Are there moments where it becomes overwhelming even for you?
Honestly, like every doctor has cases. So unfortunately, we think very, very kind of pragmatic. We think like computer at times. We have to, as I use the word triage and those medical lingo, we have to think that way because when there's an emergency, we cannot be emotional and get too involved with the patient and their family. We have to really think medically how we can save this patient's life. And sometimes we can't. Patients will die, and every doctor that you will talk to has, these memories imprinted in their mind of patients they could have saved, and they die. And I have several during residency when you're not, when you're still inexperienced, you're taking care of patients. I still remember the face of those individuals that died in front of me that I felt like I could have saved. Over the last few weeks, there's a lot of images that, although a lot of people don't send me a picture of their face, but I know I see pictures of their arms and their legs and their stories. And these are kind of imprinted in my mind, and it's very hard to forget them. So it's very tough to deal with it. But every day I have to tell myself, like, what I'm doing is good. I'm trying to help. And I hope everybody feels like that's what they're doing right now, because the smallest thing you can do will make a difference. And it's hard to deal with it. And I've cried so many times. It's I don't want to say anhedonia where you just have no connection to the outside world, but I felt that, that I see things happening in front of me and I just have to think like a computer, what's the next step I can do. But I really hope that, if we all kind of join and we talk about it and, we can take a step forward and hopefully help the people of Iran.
How old are your little ones?
I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they act like they have so much energy, and it's very hard.
Does the 5-year-old, they starting to understand what's going on, or do you try and shield them from that?
We don't allow them to get too involved in what's going on, just because I don't think they would understand.
Yeah.
And sometimes, my phone is full of images of people's injuries, and I don't allow like my daughter used to grab my phone to look at pictures. Now she can't. So we're putting limitations on how much they get exposed to these things.
Is there, before I let you go, is there something, if I say, tell me about something that's really inspired you, a story or a person or something that you've dealt with that has been such an inspiration for you, where in the last couple of months, where does your mind go?
I think most recent that I actually posted about this last night. I just started scrolling through messages, and I saw this woman message me about donating her eye, and we talked earlier about how so many of these young individuals have lost their vision and they're blind, and some of them in both eyes, and that just kind of touched my heart when I read it. And from a medical side, and I made a post about it, you cannot donate an eye because I explained in my post that, you have this nerve that's attached to it. And right now we're not at a level to take somebody's eye and connect it to that nerve, because that nerve has millions of small little fibers. And we think in 10 years we can do this, but not right now. But just the fact that she wrote this message, like me and my husband, we talked about it. We have 2 eyes. And if there's anybody in Iran that has lost both their eyes, we're willing to donate one of our eyes. And that just melted my heart. The fact that we're just, the people that live in Iran, they just care so much about each other. That's something you don't really see in the Western world or in social media. They don't talk about that. But there's so much kindness and what's the word, like as khod gozashtegi, like, I don't know if you know.
Giving of oneself. Yeah.
Just giving up, and trying to help each other. And that was just one example. And I've had so many of them. I talked about shortage of medication. All these people message me like, I have this medication, I have that medical thing I can donate. I talked about, some people cannot afford medical care. Everybody starts donating money. It's just, we care so much about each other. And that's the beautiful thing about this movement, that we all want to just live happily next to one another and help each other. And really that touched me.
Dr. Kayvan, I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate the time today. I know you're busy. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Jian.
Bye-bye, Eza.
Bye.
Thought that never changes remains a stupid lie. It's never been quite the same. No hearing or breathing, no movement, no color, just silence. The rise and fall of shame.
This is Roqe, episode 220, The Uprising. Dear West, can you offer more than lip service? Let's go to Germany next. And my next guest has been a human rights advisor and refugee counselor in Germany for over a decade. Parastoo Fatemi received her master's in human rights from the University of Vienna. She has extensive experience managing projects related to refugees, people with disabilities, and gender issues. She is one of those folks who tends to hold the UN to account as well. Right now, Parastoo Fatemi joins me from Dusseldorf, Germany. Hello.
Hi, dear Jian. It's a great pleasure to be in your program again.
It's nice to have you back on the program, and it's actually interesting timing because the last time we had you on, it was about a month ago, and you were very eloquent about wanting the UN to really step up. So since then, we had this UN special session on Iran last week. What did you make of it?
Actually, I was surprised because I was attending to the Human Rights Council since 2012 for the first time. And as a project officer, I coordinated a project for over 4 years, almost 4 years, in the Human Rights Council in Geneva and Vienna, and also continued as independently going there and representing this NGO in the United Nations. We tried, many of us and also many other opposition, for many years to get a notice and attention of the international community and the human rights situation and mass violation of human rights in Iran. And we were surprised this time it works out, and they created this a special session, and actually they voted for a resolution which ended up with a fact-finding mission in Human Rights Council.
Yeah, it's hard for those of us who don't know this area that well to kind of understand whether this is a big deal or not. I mean, we've had people on the show telling us it's a big deal. The UN took a vote, and it seemed like it was important, and we saw headlines like UN finally recognizing Iran. Do you think it's a big deal?
Actually, I find it a very important procedure. The United Nations did it for some countries such as Libya and Syria and some other countries. So first of all, for a country like Iran, they try to ignore about the human rights violation, and people, they don't have access to the independent judicial system. This is very important to actually facting and finding the all issues which has happened, and going for make its documentation. And then you have a chance to prove it, and then you can have a chance to show which person was involved in those crimes. We don't have such an independent procedure within the country. We hadn't in the past 44 years. We tried a lot, and we had some resolution in the past, but never had such a possibility. For example, during decade of 80s, it was a mass killing of the opposition for the political parties, over 5,000 persons, but never they did it. And now recently they create such a mechanism, which is really important for documentation of the violations which Iranian government, they are ongoing. They are doing that since, especially since 16th of September.
Yeah, I mean, we had Dr. Amiri Moqaddam on the show on Monday, and I was asking him the same question around this idea of a fact-finding mission and an investigation. And I don't know if there's any change in the news today, but they still haven't named who the people involved in these missions are going to be. And it seems like a whole process, although I know they've spoken the language of getting this done quickly, et cetera. It feels like for those of us waiting in the wings, kind of with wanting something urgently to change, that this is a very meticulous but a slow process. Do you think that the fact-finding mission is something that is going to make a big difference?
The expectation from this diplomatic way, which we have it from within our community and maybe also in some other countries, it's wrong, because they expect UN make steps getting in, and due to the rise of sovereignty and many other international laws, this is not possible. We need to find enough facts and proof of the evidence of what has happened. So it is slow, but it's not that slow, for example, as International Criminal Courts, because I was also attending in ICC and ICTY in Netherlands, and I saw some procedure, and also we followed and we talked with the judicial system there, and we saw, okay, this is really long, and till when they want to bring these persons and to which they were accused of the crimes to the criminal court, sometimes it takes a really long time. But recently we saw for Hamid Nouri in Sweden what the Iranian community and opposition they did. It was really fantastic. They could prove it, and now his sentence, and minimum he can have some justice in the other countries. So this procedure from the 53rd session of Human Rights Council to the 55th is not that long. And the mission they are gathering, and they would be created very soon, actually, from the United Nations, and they start to doing this procedure and start their jobs. But Iranian government, they announced they won't collaborate with them, so we are not surprised. This is something we could expect it. In the last years, they never allowed us special reporters traveling to Iran and getting the independent investigation. And the name of this group actually is an independent fact-finding mission. So now I had another live before, and I also explained that if we expect those groups that are traveling to Iran and Iranian government, they will be present with those victims or the family of the victims and recording what they are saying, so they don't have any security. And government also, they ignore, they don't let them to travel and doing the independent investigation. That's the reason they can do it also with a distance. They did also for the other countries, and this procedure exists, but it's make it a little bit more difficult for them to find the proof, but it's not impossible.
And when you mentioned the Hamid Nouri case in Sweden, as I recall, that sets a precedent as well that Iranian regime authorities can be internationally prosecuted retroactively down the road for atrocities committed now, right?
Exactly. So they are documenting those crimes. They can also they are going through this procedure. So for them, it's very important to find which person and which institution they were involved with those crimes and also the human rights violation. So this is a procedure. It would be really helping. So some people, they are accused, and they need a proof to condemn them for those crimes. For example, we had a huge discussion in the media. Which crimes has happened? Is it war crimes? Is it crimes against humanity? It's not that easy in a legal term to make those definitions till when we don't have enough proof. And proof somehow exists in media, but they need to have the witnesses. They need to have enough proof to can refer to them internationally. So as an opposition or the human rights activists, I can say, yeah, that's easy to say something or some word or some termination, but for them to create a procedure and in order to internationally, Iranian or either international people, they can refer to them to bring those persons to the court in the other countries, they need some documents. And these documents create and did it with a very, very professional job with an experted person from the United Nations. And it's not that long. So this procedure, I find it quite fast and it's not that long. So they are providing this report in every session of the council, and the final report would be on the 55th session of the Human Rights Council.
How do you feel about the terminology being used in media and in social media? I mean, I'm glad you brought this up because I was going to ask you how we can officially assess what is happening in Iran. For instance, in social media, you'll see people saying things like, this is genocide. And war crimes. And I myself have talked about massacres when it comes to Kurdistan or Balochistan and crimes against humanity. Is in terms of an official lexicon vis-a-vis what's happening in Iran, what terms can we credibly use?
First, as we don't have the possibility of the transparency and getting the exact data, and we cannot refer to them, those to lack of information and control by the government. Journalists, they are in jails, many activists, they are in jails. We don't have any independent non-governmental organization. Most of those they are working, they are also governmental, non-governmental organizations, which they are providing the reports in order to support the states. So getting the info, when journalists, activists, media, they are all under suppression, is very difficult to refer to the exact data. But we are receiving the information from the citizen journalists. That means nowadays due to the this chance of getting the social media and having access to the internet. If the Iranian government, they let the people get to the internet, we can receive a lot of information through their own citizens. They don't have any expertise, but they are providing the information. But in the same time, we have this risk to refer to the correct information. Sometimes, for example, for us as a persons that are working in these violations and crimes, especially, it's very difficult because sometimes they are uploading the past evidence. For example, it was due to the last 3 years or 5 years, and we need the exact data when exactly and where it's happened and which person has done it. So some lack of information sometimes exists, but we cannot ignore it. So Iranian government, they mean it, and sometimes they make a misinformation in media in order to make a confusion. Sometimes, for example, they try to destroy the presence of some heroes. For example, in media, we had people like Hossein Ronaghi for over 65 days being on hunger strike. Then they try to bring the topic. If he say the reality, if it was correct, if it's not, then they start to make a division between the opposition.
Yes.
So this is kind of difficulty to receiving exact information. But I find it now is doing quite well. We received lots of data, so we had either proof from the sexual abuses, we had the proof of the torture, we had the proof of the rape. This is what we have, but a massacre or genocide, I can go more for massacre. Genocide still is a little bit more strong, and for me, generally, what Iranian government are doing in general, they are more for accusation of the crime against humanity. Maybe if we can provide enough information and data to the special regions like Sistan and Baluchistan and Kurdistan, maybe we can also accuse them to the war crimes. But this is a little bit more difficult.
But I mean, if the New York Times, they did an investigation, say in the Baluchistan case, and came up with the 53 people died in one day, and the New York Times called it a massacre, is that enough, or do we need a UN investigation or something to be able to know that? Or even with the crimes against humanity, I mean, we just had Dr. K on, and the withholding of medical goods, medical supplies, is a contravention of international law, he was saying. So, I mean, these things are empirical. We don't have to guess at them, right?
Exactly. Now, what has happened, for example, like the sexual violences, or they don't let the prisoners or imprisoned person or injured persons during the demonstration getting the access to the hospital, or getting the treatment, or they don't give them the chance to going to either getting their medicine. We had, for example, case of Arash Sadeghi, they don't let them to get the medicine, specifically he has a cancer. So they can also bring this, accuse them for crime against humanity. So those are all of these facts. They are proof of crime against humanity. But what they can do, the families and the family member, they can show which person they were involved. Either some soldiers, either they are involved with this procedure. Either the person, for example, the company, they try to make a filtering. They are involved with those crimes. If we can prove the crime, so it's not just belongs to the government or who kills persons or who makes a torture in prison. This is going to every individual who is involved for those crimes. So this is really important. And if you make this definition, and people, they realize they are doing a crimes which has a consequences. It's not like Iranian government give them some goods in the end and getting some advantages. So probably it makes more difficulty for them after certain time, and it would be, we guess, it would reduce the crimes within the country.
All right. Well, before I let you go, I mean, I know you deal in the field of human rights, not just inside Iran, but in different parts of the world. So I wanted to ask you about the World Cup. We all watched, of course, Iran at the World Cup, and there are many opinions about Team Melli. But I want to ask you about the Qatari authorities. There's something infuriatingly ironic about a nation that was granted this World Cup despite a global outcry about human rights violations, then seeming to violate human rights of people who want to wear Women Life Freedom t-shirts into a football stadium. What did you make of the crackdown on any form of dissent when it came to the Iran games over the last week or so?
I want to make some explanation regarding sport. Sport is political in Iran and many other countries. So football championship and actually this worldwide football games is also very political. Regarding FIFA, it was many information, many reports, many demonstrations, people in Europe, Western states, many different countries. They tried to make it clear for the FIFA and Qatar, make a mass human rights violation. Many workers, they died for the bad working condition in Qatar to create those stadium and the places for this championship. But they didn't care about this. I think the money closed the eyes of the politicians and either the people that are in the international organizations such as FIFA, so they don't care. And it was so sad traveling to those countries. Iranian people, they had t-shirt, they had the flags of the women life and freedom. It was a slogan of this movement in Iran, or either they were against the Iranian football team, national team, because they were meeting the president who was involved in those crimes before their trips to Qatar. And all people, they were really mad. So Iranian people, they didn't want to, most of them, they didn't want to watch this match, and also they didn't follow it. And we saw they expected something different. Last night, it was a celebration it was a Tuesday, sorry, two nights ago, it was a celebration of the winning USA for Iranian people, that Iran is lost. And the government, they shot people in the country. They put the people from the Qatar stadium out in order to make a favor to Iranian government. And FIFA doesn't say any words regarding that. But for your information, Jian, and my experience, in Germany, as a country, they love football, and many other Western countries in Europe, for example, Italy and so on,
of course,
they don't watch a Qatar match because of these human rights violations.
You feel like a lot of people, even in Germany, are boycotting this.
Pardon?
You feel like even in Germany, there are a lot of people boycotting the World Cup,
no,
not watching.
They don't, not because of Iran. Generally, for the World Cup, they don't follow it because of these human rights violations.
But I guess I was kind of going where I was going with it was: is there any reprisal that can exist for the way the Qatari authorities have dealt with that crackdown on dissent, or is that's Qatar, that's what they do, there's nothing we can do about that?
Theoretically, maybe some things exist, but in reality, the power of some countries and financial power of some countries unfortunately close the eyes of some international community. So to be honest, I'm not really expert in that way. I'm not a lawyer and I cannot make a comment in that question, but like I said, maybe as an activist, we can create some campaign, we can follow up, because I think it's very important when something's wrong has happened, we are not closing our eyes and going away. We need to follow up and ask for some response for what they did. But if legally we can do it or not, I'm not really expert to respond to this question.
So before I let you go, we talked about the UN special session. In terms of that space, UN, NGOs, people dealing with human rights, what do you expect or hope happens next on the international stage with respect to Iran?
Actually, I had some short talks also with a special rapporteur of Iran, Mr. Rahman, and personally, I think they need to create some procedure very fast, and they would be quick, and give a possibility to the Iranian people which they don't have access to the media or they don't know the other languages, to provide the documents and give them some safety and some security. If they provide the information, then they don't find some consequences with the government, and getting the some urgent action, providing urgent action. We saw, for example, the UNICEF had some speech and some other countries, but creating some safety, especially for the family of the victims, and specifically for the protesters, they are at the risk of life because Iranian government, they started to give a death penalty and for mass arrest. So we need some urgent action from international community regarding this tortures and death penalty sentences.
Parastoo, as ever, I thank you so much for this today. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day.
That's Parastoo Fatemi, the human rights advisor in Dusseldorf, Germany. And this is full-time for Roqe for today, episode 220. Thank you to the amazing team who put this show together. Sabi Roham, talented Anahita, Super Parisa, Smart Pegah, Roqe Mirhadi, and Groovy Shaya. Thank you to all of our guests today and Darya on the Roqe Roundtable. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. And you can support Roqe through our crowdsourcing efforts at roqemedia.com. Just press the support us button to become a patron. We appreciate it. Find me on Instagram at jianghomeshi. Mizunbashi.